May 1st, 2010. It's 4:51 a.m. and a young woman named Shannan Gilbert calls 911. The phone call lasts 23 minutes, and it's not until a neighbor calls 911 that the police arrive, nearly an hour later. By then, Shannan Gilbert has vanished. Her mother, Mary Gilbert, is a force of nature who refuses to let her disappearance go unchecked, which leads to the discovery of several dead bodies on Gilgo Beach. Years later, Netflix releases a film in 2020 called Lost Girls that details that mother's fierce pursuit of her daughter and the mystery behind her disappearance. And this journey was inspired by a true story. Welcome to True Crime for Cinephiles, a podcast devoted to making sure the artists get it right. This is inspired by a true story. I'm Aaron Peterson, an accredited film critic for The Hollywood Outsider for over 15 years and true crime follower for even longer. Joining me today are my fellow film critics from The Hollywood Outsider and true crime lovers themselves, John Davenport and Amanda Sink.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
Hello, hello. This is going to be hopefully not too dour, more interesting. And we're really going to have to put John, on like a very short leash from the joke standpoint.
Oh no, those going to be jokes. I just won't. I just won't be making jokes about how hot somebody is. So that's
that's
weird.
A good choice.
Greatly
that's
appreciated.
Right.
New episodes, as always, can be found wherever you listen to podcasts or at thehollywoodoutsiders.com. As this is our first episode, I want to break down Inspired by a True Story. As fans, we all love a good film based on true events, but afterward, we're always debating how much of that is actually true and how much was Hollywood, quote-unquote, magic, aka exaggeration or outright nonsense. So there are two pieces to this podcast, the crime itself and the movie or TV series it inspired. We're going to discuss the overall details of the actual crime first, then we're going to review the film on its own, and then finally tell you what the filmmakers got right or wrong. Film and true crime fans alike are always debating how true their true crime actually is, so it's time to investigate the Gilgo Beach murders and the film that inspired it, Netflix's Lost Girls. Before I talk about the crime, I kind of want to ask you guys, who had seen Lost Girls before they caught Rex Heuermann?
Ooh, not I. I think I saw it just after that happened.
Like that inspired you to go check out the movie?
It was either suggested on Netflix or it was suggested by Aaron. And one of those two options got me to watching it.
Let's just go with the Aaron one. That feels right.
Yeah.
Right. I hadn't watched it until I knew we were going to be doing the show. So this show is what really got me to sit down and watch it. I'm so glad you keep on saying Rex Heuermann because I keep on thinking Rex Tillerman in my head, and I don't know why.
That's completely separate, but film related, so it works. I had seen this a couple years ago, actually, before he was ever caught. So it was very, very interesting to me how everything kind of unfolded, because and we'll talk about it more when we get to the actual movie, but if you watch the movie before they caught him, you would automatically kind of be leaning toward Peter Hackett, would you not?
Absolutely. I thought that's where we were going to go with it. And then I went back, was like, oh, wait a minute. No, that's not who that was.
Yeah, so that's an interesting part. It's very interesting. And we're going to get into it, but first, let's talk about the overall details of the crime. So Shannan Gilbert called her driver Pac around 12:20 a.m. on May 1st, 2010, asking for a ride to Oak Beach to meet with Joe Brewer, her client. They arrive at his house around 2 a.m. At 2:30, they leave in Brewer's vehicle for about 15 minutes and return. Short phone calls between Shannan and Pac occur, and then at 4:45, Shannan becomes erratic. At 4:50, Brewer summons Pac and asks him to get Shannan out of his house. When Pac enters the house, he says that Shannan clearly said, "You guys are trying to kill me." Shannan hides behind a couch and calls 911 at about 4:51 a.m. That call will last 23 minutes. She bursts out of the door and ends up at neighbor Gus Coletti's house. She asks for help, and he calls 911. She leaves again, acting agitated. Shannan knocks on Barbara Brennan's door, who also calls 911. That's 3 911 calls. I just want to point that out. 3. Heck keeps trying to chase Shannan, but eventually he gives up after she continues to lose him. At about 5:40 a.m., the police finally arrive. Some sources have said it really wasn't until even 6 a.m. they got there. Regardless, at this point, Shannan is gone, and Pac has given up and headed home. And that was that. Until. On May 3rd, Mary Gilbert received a call from Dr. Peter Hackett, a surgeon who lived by Brewer, and he told Mary that he ran a home for wayward girls and that Shannan was in his care and he had medicated Shannan. It's important to note that Hackett denied making this call even shortly after Shannan went missing and her sisters and Mary showed up, until phone records later proved it. He said later that he never actually met Shannan. Well, that's weird. Then why are you making phone calls? How'd you get the number? It's a whole bunch of things. And the police never treated him like a true suspect. What happened next is really simply sad. The police dragged their feet and, for a bit, did not treat Shannan's disappearance with the respect it deserved. She was just a sex worker in their eyes, and a crazed one at that. Mary Gilbert refused to back down. This led to an exhaustive search, which led to tragedy. Several dead bodies, but initially none of them were Shannan. Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Amberlynn Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Jessica Taylor, unidentified bodies, more victims were arriving every month. 1 year after the first remains were found, they finally found Shannan Gilbert's body in the middle of a marsh not too far from Peter Hackett's property. All told, 11 known victims have been found in Gilgo Beach.
Okay, so real quick, one of the craziest parts of this story is one of them is that when Mary Gilbert was taken to see her daughter where they found Shannan, they actually took her to the back porch, like balcony of Hackett's house. They specifically took her up there and then pointed to where they found her daughter's body. And so, like, one of the wild things about this to me is that's, at least in my eyes, is implying that the police also think that this man is involved at this point. Finally.
I would love to think that, but these might be some of the dumbest police officers I've ever encountered in true crime.
100%.
Yeah.
Not dumb. They're not dumb. They're actually very smart. They know what they're doing. They're very intentional, but they are intentionally evading. I think that it's intentional.
You think they're rubbing her nose in it?
I don't think that this particular officer or detective or deputy, whomever it was that took her to the balcony was, but I think that the rest of them who were involved in clearly covering things up were, because there's so much evidence that points to this Long Island killer having knowledge about how long that they could stay on the phone and taunt the victims, which we'll talk about. And how long that remains untraceable, how, to escape and evade some of the things that are going on with the police investigation, quote unquote investigation, I should say, which really didn't happen much until Mary got involved. But I just think that it's really crazy that at least one person felt, hey, this dude's got to be somewhat involved somehow. Because otherwise, why are we going to take you to his property among all of the other houses in the area? And instead of taking you directly to the source of the body, we're going to point to you and say, hey, look, you can see it from here. That's how far away, that's how close it is.
Yeah, if anything, you would think they would do the opposite and take you to someone else's house so that they didn't make it seem so painfully obvious that maybe it's Peter Hackett. Not that he is. I mean, obviously, they caught someone else in respect to the three others, possibly 4.
Right. Well, one of the police techniques is that, if they're trying to get somebody to turn around and confess, or at least start, putting pressure on the person they think who did it, is to do something like this, where they're putting on this theater show for the suspect, to try to start either putting them off kilter, getting them to be getting them to panic, do something out of the normal so that it will trip them up and draw more attention to them as far as what they've actually done.
Maybe that's what they were doing. It's hard to tell. With this entire investigation is insane, honestly, in so many ways. So many ways. Well, several of the other victims' families reported receiving concerning phone calls. Barthelomew's mother said a man using the victim's cell phone made taunting calls and claimed he killed her. Do you think you'll ever see her again? The unidentified male caller asked Barthelomew's sister on August 26, 2009. You won't. I killed her, he added and hung up. The phone call ended after less than a minute. So basically, the killer was taunting the victims' families. And again, I'm not saying it should. I'm not a detective. Neither are most of you listening, I'm guessing. But on the same token, shouldn't that raise a huge flag since Peter Hackett did call Mary Gilbert?
I mean, there's a lot of red flags that should have been raised to call a lot of things into question.
Yeah, true.
The piece that I have most problem with is the fact that when she went missing, this all goes back to how little they cared initially. When she went missing, they did nothing to even try to retain the evidence, which was her sweater that she was wearing that they found. Mm-hmm. And that ended up getting lost throughout the 1 month time frame or however long it was until they found her body.
Right.
So that entire time, that to me, that shows you as a department, as a whole entity for a police station, every single one of you couldn't have cared less until she was found dead, because you had a valuable piece of evidence that is now just poof.
No, 2 points to that. One, thank you for saying the correct English phrase. Couldn't care less, not could care less.
You're welcome.
And also pointing out the sweater. The fact that the sweater would have or could have shown exactly who she was with at through this entire time by DNA samples and whatnot, and it was lost to the world, because that just shows that the police did not take it very seriously.
Yep. And to me, that's one of the saddest parts of this entire thing, is how disposable these women's lives were to the police.
Just wild. Absolutely wild. This is what Mary Gilbert said at her daughter's funeral. They say she's at rest now, but she's not. She'll never be at rest until I complete the fight and give her justice. And that ends up being a very, very bittersweet quote, sadly. So the police initially ruled it a death by drowning, but Mary ordered an independent autopsy, which was consistent with homicidal strangulation. Feels a little different. I'm not a medical examiner, but, coincidentally, yeah, and it's sad to laugh at that, right? But it's almost funny in a way that it's so different.
It's laughable how disgusting it is.
Yes.
How completely obliviously
just
ridiculous gross some of these statements are.
Death by drowning or death by, what was it?
Homicidal strangulation.
Well, no, there was death by drowning or exposure to the elements, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the initial cause of death was. And how do you miss broken hyoid bones on a skeleton?
Ah, yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I do know that nobody in this town seems to be very good at their job.
Right.
Suffolk County really needed a rebuild, which it feels like they have good officers in place now that are finally, doing the job that they're being paid to do. But for a long time, it sure wasn't the case.
And probably thanks to Mary, honestly.
Yeah, in many respects. I mean, Long Island and Gilgo Beach and Oak Beach, that this whole area was just deserved much better, and these women deserve so much better than they got. Coincidentally, homicidal strangulation is the same method that took the lives of many of those victims that were found. But police still maintain to this day that Shannan's death may have been accidental in nature. And I do want to say, look, it's possible, right? They found her in a marsh. She was erratic for whatever was going on in her.
Not on drugs. We should point out she was not on drugs. There were no drugs found in her system. No drugs
in her system. Now, there is mental illness in her family, and I'm sure that they're going to point to that. But on the same token, guess what? You know what's more likely? There's a serial killer in the general area.
Yeah, that checks out. The
I'm just
math
saying.
checks out there.
I every time I see an interview with the police, well, there was mental illness in her family. I'm like, yeah, there was also a serial killer there. Like, coincidentally, right there. Literally, her disappearance led to the finding of all these bodies. How do you not, in some way, feel that there might be a connection? And this is not like internet detective, and it's not. This feels like common sense, man. This doesn't even feel like a reach to me.
I think there's that old adage, right? There was that one is something that happens, 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a pattern, and 4 is a serial killer.
What is 11? Like, what?
Yeah. Apparently to the police, not murder. The other thing that really pisses me off about that, Aaron, referencing the comments that are made about mental illness in the family, did they do a 23-minute deep dive while she was on 911 and they avoided providing any protection or assistance to her until multiple other people called, where they said, oh, hey, I guess she's got mental illness in her family. Let's not bother helping her until we get some corroboration from other people.
No.
Like, no, that didn't happen. You failed to do your job. You failed to help this woman. You failed to protect her. You could have prevented her death. It doesn't matter how she died. You still could have prevented it.
Well, it's even worse than that. It's probably more along the lines of, this mom is really, really just beating us at our jobs. Maybe there's mental illness.
Yeah.
Maybe she has mental illness. I mean, the middle daughter, she seems fine. The little one, though, that's a problem. So there's that's what the problem is right there.
Amanda, I got a question because for those that don't know, Amanda has a degree in psychology. So how does that sit unwell with you? Does that bother you from a psychological standpoint that it's being treated in that way and less in the part of the serial killer pattern way? That question makes sense.
You mean the fact that they continue to point to mental illness?
Yes, as opposed to that's the more likely culprit.
Yeah, because especially to me, so much of the investigation was denied, and there was no denial based on mental illness initially on the onset. It was failure to do your job properly, and it was covering things up. It was not taking the proper steps related to evidence, that we talked about. So I can fully understand, at some point in the investigation saying, does this have a contributing factor to what occurred? Sure, I am totally fine with you asking those questions. But to completely negate the entire investigation and say, well, there was mental illness, we find out years later, or, a month later, whatever it may be, that they finally get that confirmation that there's mental illness in the family. I think what it really comes down to is the police have engaged with these sex workers, with these women, probably personally, but we know for certainty that they've interacted with them, for fun. So they are going to implicate themselves if they get involved in this investigation, if they do anything about it. And historically, from a societal standpoint, women who are sex workers have much less value attributed to them than any other woman, especially if it was like a mother of 3 who's just at home being a stay-at-home mom or something like that.
Absolutely.
But I mean, what I think a lot of this comes down to is negligence based on assumptions and societal interpretations of like how we see the value of these women. Is it worthwhile to put our resources into finding this one, at the time, probably one girl or woman who's missing? Well, we've got other things to worry about, So I think that they were dismissive of it because of that reason, and then wanted to find justification for why they had validity in what they did. And that's where they started pointing fingers to mental illness. And that pisses me off.
Yeah.
All of it pisses me off.
I do want to say that we need to be careful about what we're commenting on, because we can't assume that because the cops were partaking in the vocational choices that these women were taking.
Wow, that is the most polite way to say we were engaging in sex workers.
Right. We don't want to assume that's why that right there is why they were.
She didn't assume. She made it a theory.
These are my interpretations. I'll make that statement
Okay, yes.
to cover myself. I feel you, John.
Yeah.
These are my interpretations.
All alleged.
Yes.
Right. I just want to make sure that we add alleged because, we don't want to be those people.
No.
You know what's not alleged, though? The fact that they failed to properly handle evidence, the fact that they failed to properly respond. And the saddest part about this is incredibly common, that when women call police and they ask for assistance, they don't get it for a very long time. It is, I can attest to that as a woman who has called the police for an emergent need.
They chop it up as you're being hysterical, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Statistically, women are misunderstood, I guess, would be the first part of it. Because, look, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they are misunderstanding. Do women come across emotional and hysterical and things like that? Sure. Do men? Probably. Does the way someone calls in asking for help, should that really have an effect on the timeliness of getting that service? No.
No.
Should you just automatically be sending an officer out? Yeah, ma'am, we'll send someone out immediately. You're telling me that they're trying to kill you? Guess what? I want to investigate that. And here's the other thing. If it was mental illness, let's say because schizophrenia ran in their family.
Which it did.
Yep, which is fine. Look, I'm not going to skate around the facts that are present. So let's say that hypothetically it was schizophrenia that she was enduring in that moment. You didn't think that was a good idea to get someone out there anyway?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
that goes back to mental health is icky and we don't need to worry about it. I gotta say, not related to this story, but I had two instances, and one just happened today while I was walking my dogs, where I accidentally dialed 911 because my phone was sitting in my pocket. Like the first time I accidentally called 911, I was flying my drone someplace, and all of a sudden this cop comes walking right to me, and he's like, "Hey," I'm like, "What's going on?" He goes, "Did you call 911?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You sure?"
That's creepy.
Yeah, and I pull out my phone, and it turns out my phone did dial 911 because it was just slapping the inside of my leg a certain
location.
Way. Yeah, and they tracked my location that way. And then today, same sort of thing. I had my phone in my pocket. I was, I'm a little moist because, it's Florida, but also I was just out of the gym walking the dogs. And my phone is slapping against my leg again, and I accidentally calls emergency services. I end the call real quick thinking, okay, I caught it fast enough this time. Those guys called me right back.
I find it amazing that you continuously make this mistake. Like, what is your leg doing that it's calling Why is your leg asking for help all the time? Is it because you're pushing it too hard? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, my phone is slapping against my leg, so
it's wild. So back on topic. So Shannan's death has never been solved, and she wasn't part of the arrest warrant for Rex Heuermann. Though Mary Gilbert did file a civil suit against Peter Hackett, alleging he contributed to her death. That lawsuit was dismissed in 2018. In July of 2016, Mary Gilbert was, in fact, murdered by her daughter, Sarah, who had been suffering from mental illness for a very long time. We'll come back to that when we talk about the movie. That's a very, very tragic, sad event.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In January of 2023, Rex Heuermann was arrested for 3 of these murders linked by DNA to Melissa Barthelemy in 2009 and Megan Waterman and Amber Costello in 2010. It's important to note Amber Costello also had a friend a month before her disappearance, who had witnessed who he claims is Rex Heuermann, had gotten into a discrepancy with Amber Costello at that time, and he had actually broken it up and made him leave because he was attempting to what seemed like rape her at the time. So that's a wild series of events. So it feels like they have the right guy in custody, but again, with everything that's happened in this case, until there's a conviction, I don't know. I just don't know. But they have DNA connecting him. Heuermann's home is also listed in connection with his business, RH Consultants and Associates. He's an architect in New York, and that's about all we know about him. But he was not charged with the Shannan Gilbert murder or disappearance, however you want to word it.
I mean, there's a couple other crazy details that I've come across recently about Rex Heuermann. It's not only just Rex's DNA they found, but also bits and pieces of his wife's DNA that they found on the tape that he was using, which is even more damning, because that just means that it's tape that obviously came from inside his home.
Mm-hmm.
There's some conversations about people who are suddenly coming forward saying, well, if anyone is a serial killer, it's definitely him, because there's a lot of strange interactions they've all had with the guy where they feel like, or it seems like he is either overacting or overreacting to things that just don't make sense.
What can I say in like fair, and I don't want to be fair to a serial killer. That's not what I mean. But in
Hold on, this is where we add the alleged part too.
Right.
Alleged serial killer.
Yes, I'm sorry, alleged serial killer. Devil's advocate. Don't they always say that? Isn't there every time they catch anyone in a crime, aren't there always neighbors or friends that have to come forward that aren't really neighbors or friends, or aren't really friends, I should say. They just have to tell you about all the weird things that happened that one time. Haven't we all had like weird things?
I've got one case that I can point to and say that, no, it doesn't always happen, and that's Ted Bundy.
Right. Well, okay. Frequently these days with social media attention, it feels like everybody wants to be popular. Everybody wants to be on camera. So a lot of people are coming forward saying, well, I had this altercation. This happened. Da, da, da. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying a lot of it happens after someone is caught.
Okay. I mean, it's fair. Yes, people will try to get their 10 minutes of fame or whatever, 10, 15 seconds of fame, whatever they can afford these days and time of fame, by stepping forward and being like, oh, no, he looked at me cross-eyed one day after he got nailed in the testicles. That's just, I mean, I'm sure that happens, but also there's the chance that there are at least one or two people who are reasonable who are like, yeah, no, there was always something off about him.
And they never said anything to anyone about it.
Right.
That's the only thing that concerns me. I mean, usually if I think of someone is odd, I've told somebody about it. Mostly so if I go up missing, people know to look at that dude.
Right. No, there's been plenty of people in my life where I'm like, hey, I'm going to go hang out with this person only because you're making me. But if I disappear because he makes me feel weird,
yep, it's
on you.
As of the time of this recording, there's no convictions for Rex Heuermann, just so you know. But now it's time to talk about Lost Girls, the movie Lost Girls from 2020, starring Amy Ryan and wonderful Dean Winters. Thought I was going to say Gabriel Byrne, didn't you? No, Dean Winters. My God, mayhem is in this. So yes. As a standalone film without any real knowledge of the case, thoughts on the movie itself? Not speaking of the details, we're going to get into what's right and what's wrong. I just mean overall as a film, how did you feel about Lost Girls?
I mean, I felt like this movie, which came upon itself to me very randomly, like I was not seeking for this story. I feel like when I watched it, I didn't actually know about the Rex Heuermann piece of it, but I feel like there was something in the news and I was like, I don't want to read about it. I just want to hear kind of like what the story was from the movie and then go from there and get all the facts. Mm-hmm. And what comes across in this film so much more than anything else is the impact and power of Mary's character. Like if there's one thing that is undoubtedly consistent with reality and also drives the power of this movie, it's the fact that that character is as passionate and driven as the real Mary.
Did you watch?
So I feel like it was.
Did you watch clips of her?
Yeah. I watched clips and interviews and things like that, and it's just that is an individual who she knew that there was something wrong. She knew that there was someone out there who murdered her daughter. She's someone who continued to drive support and attention to the case, not just for her. And I know that she had like some disputes with some of the other mothers and things like that, because at first she really didn't think that her daughter was a victim and she didn't want anyone to call her daughter a victim. She wanted everyone to see Shannan as someone who would have fought back and all of that. And, you know, I think that affected her relationship with them a little bit, but it also brought to light everything that happened. And I feel like only only a really good actress like Amy could bring a character like that to life to that extent. Like, probably to an even further extent, because she was so pissed that people weren't paying attention that she was going to do everything in her power to make them pay attention. And because of that, it made me want to pay attention.
Yeah, she was very impressive in this role. She embodied that force of nature, that mom who's not going to give up no matter what, feeling whole, through and through. And every time the cops come up and like try to call her out on some of the mistakes she may or may not have made, her ability to turn around and just be like, it's immaterial, my mistakes. The problem is this. And they just move, like, she just completely puts them all in their place. I bought it every single time it happened.
And you know what's sad is, we've all watched and listened to enough true crime to know that's exactly what happens. Is if you have a history of sadness, a broken home, broken family, blah, 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 the finger's pointed more at them than they are at whoever the perpetrator is. And it maddens me because, okay, her daughter was in foster care. Who cares? She's still a missing person. I don't care about any of that. Like, I just don't see how that's relevant other than it makes you feel better for doing a sloppy job.
That's something this movie does very well is it highlights the fact that every single time they try to diminish the value of these lost girls, let's just call it that. It's an escort. It's somebody who worked off of Craigslist. It's somebody who did this. They lived a lifestyle that was dangerous. All these things, every single time it hits in a way that if you're the kind of person that goes, yeah, no, they deserve it, then you're an absolute monster the way they depict it, because you can't sit there and watch these families as they're saying these sorts of things, and the way these characters and actors were portraying the feelings of being called out this way. You can't sit there and be like, oh no, that's fine. That's, they're right. It's wonderfully done as far as hitting the feelings, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really appreciated that. The film is much more about the victims' families, than it is about the actual crimes themselves. And don't get me wrong, the crime is definitely a big factor, but it's really about how the victims have to handle it, how they have to negotiate, how they have to navigate with this police department that doesn't seem to care at all. Even when they find multiple victims, it doesn't seem like there's a fire under their ass.
Oh no! What was it? This one of the chiefs says to Gabriel Byrne, "If this turns out to be a serial killer, you're going to be hitting that retirement sooner than expected."
Yeah,
which he did. I don't know what the correlation between there being a serial killer and this guy having to retire sooner than he needs to.
Negligence, right? Failure to do your job. You're gonna put in your retirement a lot sooner because you're not going to want to deal with the headache and the nightmare that's going to come with media and people in the area attacking you and your professionalism or attributing you to the case. I think that's really what it comes down to.
I special high marks to Amy Ryan for performance. She really, I think, owns the entire movie and doesn't shy away from playing the flaws. She isn't trying to make a perfect character here. She understands that her character is flawed, has made mistakes, but is still going to lead this charge. And especially when it makes her look kind of bad. I mean, when she's kind of shitty to those moms in many respects, and they are victims too. It doesn't shy away from that, and she has to own that. And, I think she plays even that well. It just all around she's a wonderful actress. She's been wonderful in just about everything she's done. But I think she really soars here.
She really does. I mean, she's closely followed by Dean Winters, who I think is honestly just playing Dean Winters at this point.
Okay. Dean Winters. I
wouldn't say closely.
Yeah, I would not even say in the same zip code, honestly. I mean, she's on the other coast.
All right.
Or she's fantastic. He's Dean Winters.
He's Dean Winters.
Yeah.
He's every character he's ever played on Law and Order.
Fair enough. There is something to be said too about John and Aaron, your point around the fact that this film is bringing up those elements that make it questionable, right? Like, did these girls put themselves in this position?
Ugh.
Which is something that society commonly thinks. And look, we shouldn't stray away from it just because, we being the three of us collectively feel that that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter because society does feel like it's relevant. There are factions of our people in this country who, if they were sitting on the panel making a decision, making the verdict, they may say, well, they put themselves in that position. And that, despite it being completely absurd and ludicrous, is not something that I feel we should shy away from, at least presenting. And the finger pointing that happens to the mothers, that happens to the sisters, that happens to, anybody else who's involved in that individual's life, where we can put blame elsewhere, where we can take blame away from, the sloppy police work that was done, from the mishandling of evidence that we've talked about, from every part of this investigation that was handled so poorly. That comes into question of like, okay, well, why were they even there? Why were they even doing that? They knew the risk. And those are things that those families truly had to deal with. So the fact that they put them in the movie, I actually have a lot of respect for, and how they put them into the movie, because they're not saying, hey, we're naive to this reality. They're saying, nope, we know that this is really what they went through. Let's show you what they really went through. And there's probably a portion of people who watched this movie who sat there and said, oh, well, why did Mary put her child into this foster system? Did she set her daughter up for this failure? Doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. Like, at this point now, we're just blaming the mom. And so I think it gets you to thinking through all of the elements that these families had to go through. And I like that part.
Me too. In terms of the production or writing issues, anything stand out or any issues with anything? My only thing is it's always difficult when you don't have an actual resolution, which this film does not have, because we still, even today, don't know what happened with Shannan Gilbert officially. But this film does leave you with a hefty middle finger pointed at one specific suspect who now looks a little less suspect, I guess.
It's a shame that this movie puts such a light on Peter Hackett, because he is barely a footnote in some of the case filings now.
Yeah.
And so it's a shame that the film itself, because the film itself is going to live longer than this case will to some degree. And only those people moving forward who are really into true crime will understand that it's Peter Hackett didn't have as much to do with it as they think they do, unless this is more of a tag team situation versus just a single bad actor, which is possible.
Which is possible.
Could be copycat.
Could be a totally different situation too. I mean, could be. This could be a different.
He's
scenario.
Clearly involved in some way. Is really
to
what's
some
important.
degree. He's got mom's phone number. He's got like there's something allegedly has.
No, not even allegedly. There's phone records that came out that proved that he did call. He lied when he said that he didn't call her. When he called her back, I don't remember the time frame, but I feel like it was like a week later or something. He was like, by the way, that wasn't me that called you, even though you're hearing the same voice right now.
It's wild.
But I think what comes out of this movie is, while that's frustrating, because we know the reality of this case is more extensive than that, what it was doing, in my opinion, was trying to demonstrate Mary's perspective. It was trying to give her the conclusion to her story almost, because at this point, by the time the movie came out, she had already passed away. She had been murdered.
Yeah.
Right? So the unfortunate part of that is, I think it was trying to get her voice, her opinion, her concerns, her effort involved in this to the forefront to maintain that momentum around these cases. And so while, I agree, I think it would have been nice if they would have shown a light on some of our other suspects that, even some of the other mothers have, or that the police now have. Would have been great to see some of that explored a bit more, but I also, on the other side, see it as, well, this was Mary's story.
Right.
This was her trying to, this was them trying to give her voice that was stripped away from her so often. and help her, maintain at least some form of justice one way or the other. And at the end of the day, it does that. It gets people's attention. And even though it doesn't focus on the other suspects for the case, maybe there's a follow-up movie. Who knows?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, there'll be an official Gilgo Beach murder movie at some point.
Yeah. Right.
Absolutely. On Netflix, I'm sure.
I hope that there's at least a footnote for the Gilbert family in that, because right now it looks like there may or may not be any connection that they can find yet.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. What the movie got right and what it got wrong. And we're going to start with what the movie got right and did it respect the victims. So I'm going to go through a couple of the things that they got right. Mary suffered from mental illness, like we talked, just as Shannan and Sarah did. And her daughters were in and out of foster care, just as the film states. That's all true. And shouldn't matter, really.
Shouldn't matter, but so this
should
is
matter to some degree, I guess. But
yeah, but I do feel like because so much of this movie was about what Mary went through, what her perspective was, it would have been nice to have more understanding, just similarly as they did with the finger pointing that she and other families had to experience, more understanding of like the things she truly had to endure as a mother who was taking care of children who had such extreme mental illness. Mm-hmm. We get the beginning of the movie where I think it was actually Sarah, wasn't it? Where she's the one who lights some stuff on fire in the bathroom.
Sarah's the one who killed her.
Yes, right. And so it gives you some understanding and insight into, what she's dealing with, but not to the full extent of like what schizophrenia could really look like. And how maybe that contributed to her needing to put one of her other daughters into foster care because she couldn't maintain multiple children who are enduring a lot. If we're going from her perspective, I feel like there could have been merit in providing more of that, especially because they talked about Mary's death towards the end. Mm-hmm. So I think that they could have included a bit more on that. But then again, on the offside, would have taken away from the case itself and the victims. So I can kind of see it both ways.
And it is important to note that Mary Gilbert was murdered by her daughter, Sarah, who stabbed her 227 times.
Great googly moogly.
She also hit her with a fire extinguisher. She covered her body in the foam and she took her clothes. She was going through a schizophrenic episode when she was off of her medication. So she had gone off of her medication, and that's what ensued this episode, which is very, very tragic and unfortunate.
And the judge in the case felt it was premeditated and planned. And I mean, Maddie, you're the expert in psychology. I've just got, rudimentary experience. But to me, 227 times is not a sane person.
No.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
There's the facts of the matter are she had schizophrenic medication to keep her hallucinations in check. She went off of the medication. She had a hallucination, and she had a very passionate, impulsive moment where she killed her mother. And I mean, nobody who stabs someone that many times is in a pre-planned state of mind from the standpoint of DNA being spewed everywhere alone. Like, not to get graphic, but somebody who's going to pre-plan and premeditate a murder, they're going to be thinking more like Dexter. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So
you would think, anyway. I mean, there's a lot of idiots these days. The phone call that we talked about was true. That happened. If you can believe it, that actually happened. That's the one you just assume is going to be the bullshit. But no, that happened. Dr. Charles Peter Hackett's phone call was true. When Mary asked him how he got her number, Hackett told her that he required anyone who came to his house to give him emergency contact information. However, when Shannan's sisters traveled to Oak Beach, Hackett told them a different story. Not only did he deny ever seeing Shannan, he denied calling Mary. 3 days after his first call, he made a second call to Mary, this time telling her he had never encountered Shannan and that he didn't make the earlier call. And he finally admitted to making the calls a long time later, but denied ever actually meeting Shannan. He only admitted to him after phone records proved it.
Mm-hmm. And he also he maintained his denial that he had that halfway house, that he was helping them out in any capacity. But then that leads you to, well, then how did you get her number, bud? How'd you get it?
Isn't it this? All of this is just, I don't know
There's
how.
still a lot of questions around him, honestly.
Sure. And honestly, sometimes when this happens, when somebody's wrongly pointed at or something, I feel pretty horrible for those people because it happens all the time. On the same token, this feels like one of those things where this is on you, really. I mean, a lot of this is on you. Why are you making phone calls like this if you're innocent? I mean, this is just, wow. You want to insert yourself that much?
It's very possible, in my opinion at least, that Shannan's murder was a coincidence to the other murders. Sure, it's possible because Hackett, in my opinion, there is way too many open concerns around it. She was leaving his house. She was found in his backyard, basically. He specifically called her mother. He was involved and inserted himself into the case. And the police's perspective is, well, Dr. Hackett just does this. He just likes to get a little too involved with things. That's it? That's how we're going to negate him as a suspect because dude likes to get involved? Isn't that like criteria 101 for a suspect is if they insert themselves into the investigation and try to understand what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And when we've had
What?
we've had other victims that receive phone calls as well, that's just, pretty wild. Now, you can, again, devil's advocate, you could make the case she was erratic. She was having an episode of some sort because she didn't have drugs in her system, and she ran into the marsh, and that's where the elements happen. But like I said, that independent autopsy, thank you, determined that it was strangulation. So, I don't know. We're not detectives. We're just telling you what's real and what's not, according to the facts. So police really did take an hour to respond. Dear God. 3 people called 911, and it still took them that long to get there. Not just Shannan, because I know a lot of people have to point, well, Shannan there, at that time, they couldn't trace the call. Very possible, sure. Other people called 911, and they still did not get off their ass to get there.
It should be noted she didn't give her location, but in the same respect, she also allegedly had concern that, these people were involved with the police, were the police, had connections to the police. And so, there's always a concern there too, is like, if their buddies show up, are they actually going to help me?
Sure. Interesting. Conflicting statements from District Attorney Thomas Spoda and Commissioner Dormer led to confusion about the number of perpetrators involved. As the investigation progressed, the cooperation between Suffolk County Police and the FBI faltered, hampering progress. Families of the victims voiced concerns that authorities did not prioritize the case due to the victims' involvement in sex work, and I think that's very accurate that happened. Also true, which we've talked about plenty already, also true, Mary did work with the mothers of the other victims, even if she did feel her situation was different in some ways. So there's a lot of truth in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they did a really good job at keeping, honoring Mary at the very least, with telling as much truth as possible with it.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
Because apparently she wasn't supportive of this. So it's weird to me how much information was accurate and that it came from her perspective, from Mary's perspective.
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about that in a second. So hang tight to that one.
Ooh,
okay.
Now you have my interest.
Ooh. Because now we're talking about what the movie got wrong or left out. And was it worth it? Meaning, did it make the film more entertaining? Because sometimes you can leave out facts that are just boring facts, and sometimes you can leave out really pertinent details that could have affected how we enjoyed the movie. Marie Gilbert had 4 daughters, not 3. Shannan, Sarah, Sherry, and Stevie. Does it matter to you that they left one out?
No, because I think at the time of this, wasn't one of the kids not really, connected or involved? I guess there's the offset of, well, you still should have talked about it. Because they didn't say that she only had those 3 kids. They just didn't depict the 4th.
By depicting the 4th, they have to go further into a lot of the mental health issues, because at that time, Sarah had been in foster care a couple of times because of her mental health issues. So then that means you have Shannan and Sarah bouncing in and out of foster care, or that story. And if you add that story with the 4th child, then you start muddying the waters they're trying to tell there, of the story they're trying to tell, I think.
I could see that.
Yeah.
And plus, you've only got less than 2 hours to tell this story. So.
Right.
According to the Suffolk Police Department, And I just want to point out, that's according to the Suffolk Police Department that's been in charge of this entire investigation. That's all I'm going to say. You take what you want from that. But the remains were not discovered by a dog having to pee, but during routine canine exercises while conducting the searches. I don't know. I feel like maybe that's the filmmakers throwing a big middle finger at the at the police department.
Maybe.
No, that's possible. I was going to say, I don't understand why they didn't utilize the quote unquote truth of how the remains were discovered, because I think that would have been just as intriguing and interesting of like, okay, we've got this dog who's doing its exercises and conducting the searches. And so here we get to it, rather than like this more very randomized approach.
Oh, it's not random at all. I think it's Aaron's right in saying that this is more of a middle finger to the police department by pointing out the ineptitudes of like them accidentally tripping over a body.
That's what I felt it was.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Fair enough.
Yeah. So Mary Gilbert did not support the book nor the movie Lost Girls. Robert Kolker, who's the author of Lost Girls, An Unsolved American Mystery, at the time it was very unsolved and still is unsolved in regards to Shannan Gilbert, says that he received a scathing email from Mary Gilbert regarding his best-selling book. I cannot believe all the lies you wrote about my family and I. You should be ashamed of yourself, Gilbert stated in a 2013 email. How dare you write such trash? May karma slam you when you least expect it. Kolker had interviewed Mary for the book and doesn't know why she became so opposed to it. So what do you guys take on that? That's pretty wild, since she was interviewed for the book but did not support it. And it's actually, aside from her personal issues, is quite a flattering take on her as a mother, I would say.
I think this is one of those things where you start going back to how mental health affects people. She probably was so wrapped up in the negative aspects of what had happened to her kids growing up that she was not able to see the flattering aspects of the story being told about her.
Yeah, I guess that's possible. That's where kind of the frustration comes from. Because just because you do an interview for a book doesn't mean that it's going to come out the way that you anticipated it to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think part of it could be, somebody has their own expectations, and, maybe she wanted Kolker to be more directive of like, yes, this person did do it. Or, we're not talking about my daughter's life as a sex worker, or, the mental health struggles that occurred, or whatever it may be.
Sure.
I guess some of that comes in there, and then maybe they feel like, okay, well, you exaggerated or fabricated some of this information, but we do have, other sources that validate a lot of that information. So this is the part that's very confusing to me, and I feel like sets the precedent for the police to maintain questionability of Mary's perspectives, is because there's got to be a part of them, a faction of them, if they already don't believe her, to be like, she's not all there. She's saying that, she was interviewed, but now she's saying it's all lies. So she's kind of going back on her word. And so I feel like this was probably exaggerated too.
I feel like it's almost one of those things where you can picture one of the officers back at the station house going, she's crazy just like her daughter was, or something horrible like that. I could totally see using that as some kind of fuel for whatever nonsense they want to think. It's just not, whatever her reasons, it could have been maybe she was having an episode and also overwhelmed with stress. And, like John says, maybe she just saw the sex worker, the health issues, mental health issues and all that, and just saw that as a negative and kind of reacted to it. It very well could just be like that.
Yeah, it could be just something as simple as that, considering, mental health being what it is. You already have somebody who's not necessarily, who's kind of neurodivergent in herself,
Sure.
Her children are neurodivergent. She's likely neurodivergent. So in some of those areas where neurodivergency happens, a lot of fixation crap comes in, and that's likely what could happen, especially with the amount of personality that she carries and the amount of just the sheer force of nature that she is. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that. I mean, I don't want to say that a lot of it is mental health, but it to this respect, it worked in her benefit.
Gives her a driving force.
Yep.
So John's favorite, Dean Bostwick, Dean Winters, as it were, is not a true detective. Thank God. He's a collective of various cop tropes and those who did very little to advance this case. So basically, that's also a middle finger to the police force, which is why I feel like the dog peeing thing is a middle finger to the police force as well.
Well, I mean, if you need an amalgamation of bad cops, Dean Winters is your guy, or insurance, obviously.
He's total mayhem. After Dormer left the police department, James Burke took over as the Suffolk County Police Chief, and he was appointed in 2012. And then he went to prison in 2016 over beating up a man who stole porn and sex toys. And then the DA, Tom Spota, went to prison for obstructing Burke's investigation. There's problems there, is all I'm saying.
Jeez, it seems like things aren't really lining up to be on the up and up. It's almost like there's questionable individuals attached with the Suffolk County in general.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. That's all true. Go look it up.
That's a fact I did not know prior.
Yeah. I didn't know until doing some research and went, wow. Just wow. So as well as the Gilgo Beach 4, which they are known, the 4 women found lined up, wrapped in burlap on the beach were identified as Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Barthélemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. A further 6 bodies were found in the vicinity. However, they didn't share some of the very specific similarities of the Gilgo Beach 4. Of the other 6 victims found, only Jessica Taylor has been identified. The unidentified bodies included 3 women, a man dressed in women's clothing, and a baby who was the child of one of the unidentified women. The women, including Jessica, were dismembered, unlike the Gilgo Beach 4, prompting many people to theorize that Long Island was dealing with not 1, but 2 serial killers, which is very possible. Those are completely different modus operandis.
Hey, which suspect was it that had connections to the burlap? I can't remember. But one of them had a connection to burlap where like they were the primary supplier of it for the area. It might have been Huerman or it might have been Hackett, but I feel like one of them, that's just a random fact that I found that is incomplete.
If you had names, this would be a great fact. But since you don't, we're just going to call this random speculation Amanda pulled out of her ass.
I swear to God, I found it online in a valid format.
Hey, if it was online, it had to be true. I mean, was it in a Reddit thread? Is that where you saw it?
No.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, other people of interest include Shannon's last client, Joseph Brewer, though he was cleared early on. Police chief called James Burke had hired sex workers before and blocked the FBI getting involved with Shannon's case.
Boom!
Yeah, that's what Amanda was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
A man convicted of killing 2 other sex workers, John Bitroloff. Bitroloff was arrested in 2014 for the deaths of Rita Tangretti and Colleen McNamee, whose bodies were found in the early 90s after he was linked to them via DNA. He's also a person of interest since the daughter of his victim, Tangretti, was good friends with Melissa Barthélemy, one of the Gilgo Beach 4, and Melissa had apparently received a number of calls from the Manorville area where Bitroloff was living at the time. That's wild. A lot of coincidences.
So,
don't
an
move
update
here.
to my fact.
Hang on. Don't move here. Just do not move to Gilgo Beach. This seems like a very bad area.
Or what's the sign? What was it they said the sign on this gated community says, be nice or leave?
Yeah, well, I think they need the Amityville Island sign because there's the Jaws is always lurking. Jesus.
There is a guy who's an unknown suspect. His name is Joe C. And he has a lot of the access to the burlap sacks used.
Oh, well, this is a different guy. So my fact comes from there was a guy who died by suicide 2 days after they discovered Shannan Gilbert's remains.
Mm-hmm.
He was a businessman who owned and operated a burlap manufacturing business, and it was the region's largest supplier of burlap. And as you know, with the details of this case, the victims were wrapped in burlap. And so it points to either, a guilty conscience potentially of like, okay, did he knowingly supply the burlap to someone who did this to the killer or killers? Was he involved? Or does he just feel guilty because some of his supplies were used in connection with the killings? So all of that, I mean, it's very speculative, but it's a very interesting piece that was not at all covered. This man wasn't in the story, in the movie at all.
Mm-mm. And that brings me back to a question in regards to just Shannan Gilbert, okay? And obviously, it's all theory. It's all opinion. What is your personal take? Where do you stand? Do you feel like that Shannan should be attributed to the Gilgo Beach killer? Do you feel like Shannan died of her own injuries? Someone completely different? Do you have a personal opinion, or are you still really struggling with where you? Because internet detectives, we all have a theory.
I don't know. I think I can go in a couple directions. I don't think that Hewerman was part of it, Rex. There's just something about it that feels strange to me. I definitely think that Hackett was involved in some capacity, because why else would he have the call that he made, and his involvement to some degree? There's just a lot of concerns. At the end of the day, the only thing that my gut points to, based on the facts that have been presented thus far, is that someone who has either connection to the police or has an understanding of police investigation and operations and policies and things like that, someone who had a connection was involved in her murder. I don't think that it was accidental. I don't think that it was due to the conditions. I find so much concern that one autopsy points to strangulation while another one points to drowning. Like, obviously, there's some level of asphyxiation that's involved, on either end. But those are very, very different indicators. You know what I mean? Drowning, you're not going to have any markings. Strangulation, you would have to have some markings. You'd have to have, damage to her bones or to her vocal system or something.
She had damage to her hiatal points. She was mostly, if not completely, skeletal by the time they found her.
Yeah, that part I remember even from the movie, but it just, to me, there's just way too many signs that point to
something else.
Murder. Mm-hmm.
John, what do you got?
It's tough. I don't want to sit there. I like the idea that it's Rex Hewerman or Howerman. I think that counting her or not counting her is a little bit weird. Sure, you've got essentially 3 different forms of murder happening in a small span of an area where bodies just seem to be piling up. There's something weird about this area, and I don't want to speculate as to too much if it's just one guy, 3 guys, or 2 guys. I don't know, but I think writing this off as something other than being connected is without hard evidence for it to not be connected is a little bit of a accident. I mean, or a mistake. It's just
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's just too much, Sure, you've got one person doing dismemberment, one person doing burlap sacks, and then there's this random that is a choked out hyoid bone. At the very same time, nothing about her murder, let's just say, or alleged murder, happened the same way it might have happened with the other girls. She fought, she hid, she made a massive scene. If you've got to do what you got to do as quickly as possible, sure, you may go and do the old favorites, but you don't take the time you do with like the burlap sack and everything else.
Yeah.
With as quickly as the person who perpetrated this had to act, sure, he may not have had the same sort of time to complete his ritual that he did with the other ones because of how much she fought. To her credit, how much she fought. Because if she didn't fight, we wouldn't know about this right now.
And has anybody thought about, if she wouldn't have done all that, we might still not know about these girls.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
We might still not know about them.
Her loss is sad, but her loss is also something that was able to shine so much light on several different things. Not just the fact that there were all these girls missing in the certain area, but also it's able to shine the light of the stigma that people have against certain kinds of people, whether it's mental health or whether it's sex work, whether it's all these things. I mean, I got to tell you that when early odds me, or 2010 me, I probably would be on the same boat as far as saying, well, you know what, she's a sex worker, she should know better, or she has mental health, what did you think was going to happen? But as I've become more aware and more entrenched in paying attention to these sorts of things, also sex work is not easy. I think that's part of what people always throw their garbage at sex work for. It is not easy work. We think it's all easy because when we're having sex, we're all like really enjoying ourselves. They're doing something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, there should be no stigma against it and should be legal. So these women don't
Right.
have to put themselves in danger like this because it is their choice, their body, their choice.
Right.
Isn't that what we're supposed to stand for as a country?
Right.
Yeah.
Not no more, Aaron.
Yeah, I know. Times have changed, right? Sadly, pathetically.
Somehow we've
So-
taken 15 steps back.
We'll get back there. I have faith. It's very much. I'm with both of you. I feel like there is way too many coincidences to dismiss this as not being connected to Gilgo Beach murders. Just because this one's more chaotic doesn't make it not connected. I mean, you can't just ignore the facts that this one girl led to all the other bodies. That's
Yeah, that's true. Yep.
to me. I'm just like, what do you mean? I mean, I don't even need
Found in the same area,
Yes,
specifically.
literally not that far away from all the other bodies.
Also strangled like the others.
Just wow. Now the whole Peter Hackett thing, I think they do a good job kind of pointing a good finger. I don't know how involved he is. Maybe the police know something we don't. That's very, very possible, right? That is very possible. Sometimes things aren't
I have
shared.
100% confidence that they know more than they've shared.
Absolutely. Well, I don't have 100% because basically I have no faith in their work whatsoever
Right.
these days.
But I know 100% because they also haven't released the entire phone call, which leads me, that's very suspect that they have. So again, they do have more information than we do.
Sure. that's
Because they've
possible.
never released the entirety of her 23-minute phone call. And why is that?
Yeah, maybe there's some information there we don't know.
Mm.
So, what I would say to that is I don't know who the perpetrator is because, Rex Heuermann hasn't been convicted either. Is it possible that there were two people working? Yes. Is it possible that Shannan Gilbert is connected to the other four? Yes. All those things are possible. I don't care what the police say. You can't just ignore the common denominators. This one boggles my mind.
Yeah.
To some degree. I've seen no reason. Now, maybe they have something that hasn't been shared that would explain why they know for a fact that you can't connect them. But it feels to me more like we're trying to cover our ass than it is this is the truth.
Until statute of limitations expires
Something.
on them being able to get sued or something.
Maybe.
One thing that I feel like we should also talk about and at least mention is Heuermann's evidence that's against him because he has been charged. It is important to note that he's connected by the burner phones and he is also connected by DNA that relates to the burlap. And John, you did mention his wife's DNA was attached to 3 of the victims also, which was validated. But they apparently, the wife and children have an alibi. They were out of state or out of town or something. So that then reverts back to Heuermann, whose DNA was found and validated against.
Right. No. Yeah. My point.
After all these years.
My point in bringing up that the fact that his wife's DNA was found on the strands of tape is more of a comment on how much that tape was in his house versus her involvement. Like as soon as he was charged, she was like, you know what, I gotta here's divorce papers for you.
Yeah. I feel horrible for the family.
Right. I feel
all the families involved.
I feel horrible for the family too. One of the things that because I just yesterday spent some time looking at all the news reports that were coming out about Rex Heuermann. The thing that makes me very disappointed in the news reports is that there's a lot more focus on his family and how much their life has been torn upside down because of what's happening than there is on any of the victims, and I find that upsetting.
That's upsetting. It is. Now, what would we have done different? What would you have done different with the movie Lost Girls now that you know all the facts? Because for me personally, I would have tossed the character of Dean Bostwick. Sorry, John. I just thought he was way too 90s cop. I mean, basically, he was just there to say sexist shit and be offensive, right? That's literally what he was doing. And I would have tacked on the true ending of Mary Gilbert, because I felt like that was a story that was so tragic and also connected to some degree.
No, I wouldn't disagree with the true end. Well, not the true ending, but the loss of Mary Gilbert being tacked onto the end, because we don't need to see that, and I think that would distract us from what the actual point of the story is. And you know what? I agree that we could have gotten rid of Dean Bostwick, but what we could have done is, when the cops are all working on this sort of thing, seen more detectives parroting each other about the sex work and how she's kind of asked us, instead of seeing one person kind of drill it into us, seeing several of them say like maybe smaller comments to this effect,
so we get that it's a mentality,
that we get it's a mentality, would have been much better, and maybe even more effective, because in this way, with Dean Bostwick, he's sort of in a weird way the villain of the story, and if they would have done more to paint it that way, it would have made more sense too.
So I kind of talked a little bit about what I would have done differently already. I would have included more on Sarah's mental health, because I feel like that contributes to Mary's choices in some degree, and it helps us have a better understanding of what this family endured, but also why maybe they had more fingers pointing against them, because the movie is very much like, here it is, you know, the Gilbert family is 100% correct, and these people are just crazy in terms of pointing fingers backwards. I think it just would have been good to demonstrate a little bit more of both sides, not to the degree of like putting validity into the other side, but at least understanding more of the scope of the situation. And then I definitely would have liked to see more of John Bittrolf, his involvement, potential involvement, who I referenced a little bit ago. He was convicted of 2 murders, and those remains were discovered in Long Island, a town where he lived. Manorville is also close to where the torsos of 2 of the Long Island murder victims were recovered, including Jessica Taylor and an unidentified woman. So they also found parts of their bodies years later on Gilgo Beach, linking the 2 locations. And then another detail that ties him to the Gilgo Beach murders is the fact that the daughter of Rita Tangretti, one of the women he murdered, was best friends with Gilgo Beach victim Melissa Bartholomew. He worked as a carpenter. He was known to have enjoyed hunting and killing animals. The burlap that was used, the camouflage burlap, is also commonly used with hunters. But the fact that he had the hunting part of it, and that he was apparently known to enjoy killing animals also, I mean, that's speculative, but it also still has some merit, I feel.
Definitely should be looked at. I mean, especially when he's been convicted of 2 other murders and there's a connection between 2 of them. That's a little wild. Okay, well, that's it. That's Lost Girls, Shannan Gilbert, and the Gilgo Beach murders. Thanks for doing this with me.
I think it's a good topic for us to explore the real case and see how our movies and television crews are pairing up against it.
I really enjoyed doing this. This is a good conversation I think we had, and I think we did a pretty good job. But I think I'm going to turn the mic over to our listeners. Please take the time to sit there and give us your thoughts on this production, and let us know what you like, you don't like, what we should add, what we should take out, so that we can come up with something that is a lot more. What's the word I'm looking for? Digestible?
Awesome.
Or awesome, you know. We want to come up with a good product to bring you guys, and again, we are giving you guys the opportunity to help us do that.
Absolutely. If you enjoyed this podcast, share the show on your social media outlets and give us a review in your favorite podcast app. You are our best source of promotion, so please tell your true crime maniac friends about it. And thanks for listening to Inspired by a True Story. Now let's keep those artists honest.
I like that ending. Let's keep those artists honest.
Me too. Mm-hmm. Hell yeah. Preach it.
Sweet. Now I'm going to change it to something stupid.
Don't.